And really what it came down to was they're each acting in a way that they believe is in the best interest of the kids. And so instead of finding themselves frustrated by the other parent's parenting, it's remembering, okay, this is what they believe to be in the best interest of the kids. That being said, they are not putting their kids in danger. Their kids are not unsafe. It's just a difference in parenting styles. And that's an important distinction to make.
Welcome to Divorce Diaries, where attorney Cary Jacobson brings you real stories, hard truths, and practical advice on navigating divorce and family law. Whether you're going through it, considering it, or just curious, this is your place for clarity, confidence, and resilience.
Welcome back to Divorce Diaries Lessons from the Trenches, where we share real stories and expert guidance to help you navigate divorce and life after separation with resilience and clarity. I'm your host, Cary Jacobson, divorce attorney, mediator, and advocate for out-of-court solutions. And today's episode is all about one of the most important and most challenging parts of divorce, which is co-parenting. Our guest today is Rita Morris. She is a certified co-parent coach and mediator. Rita helps parents co-parent from the inside out, anchored in their why, and focused on protecting the child's peace for a calmer, stronger future. With her background in mental health and conflict resolution, she blends emotional insight with practical strategies to help families move beyond the conflict and create healthier dynamics for children. Rita, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I would love for you to share what you mean by co-parenting from the inside out. What does that mean to you?
So I've been doing this work for a long time. And one of the things that I noticed is that you can talk about behavior change from now until the end of time. You could talk about communication skills and conflict resolution skills and all the things, right? But if you're not anchored in what's important to you, it's really easy to get caught up in all of the, what I like to call the emotional muck that was your marriage. So parenting from, co-parenting from the inside out is, why do I want to do this well? I want to do this well for the sake of my kids, and really anchoring in that. And then asking yourself, with every interaction, am I parenting? Am I co-parenting from my values and from my why?
That's amazing. We often hear, that we need to know the why behind doing something. And so this is just another example of that, and really making sure that these parents are focused on the children being the why and what it is that they want to come out of that co-parenting relationship.
Yes. One of the questions I ask all the time is, in 10 years, how do you want your kids to describe their childhood?
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure you get a variety of answers to that.
And then the next question always is, so is your behavior now in line with that vision?
Right.
And if not, that's okay, because we're all human. It's just, how do we get there?
Right. Then what changes can we make and tools can we use to make that a reality?
Yes.
So what tools do you give parents who may not be exemplifying, their goals yet?
So it's grounding them in their values of like, okay, let's do a values clarification exercise. And it's a values clarification exercise that's really designed for parents and co-parents. Mm-hmm. And then reminding you, when you are triggered, ask yourself that really important question, like, am I acting in my kid's best interest? Mm-hmm. And it's really a big part of the work that I do is really shifting mindset. For example, I had a client that I was working with this morning, and these parents have very different parenting styles. Yeah. And we were sort of teasing it out this morning. And really what it came down to was they're each acting in a way that they believe is in the best interest of the kids. And so instead of finding themselves frustrated by the other parent's parenting, it's remembering, okay, this is what they believe to be in the best interest of the kids. That being said, they are not putting their kids in danger. Their kids are not unsafe. It's just a difference in parenting styles. And that's an important distinction to make.
Absolutely. Which actually leads me to another question, which is how do you help parents who do have differing parenting styles? Because that's something that I see often, when I'm working with a couple, is it's not that they disagree on, the schedule or that sort of thing. It's some of the nuances of that have not really there's no legal solution, right? It's
Mhm.
really how are we going to parent these children? And, so many divorces happen because there is a difference in parenting style. So
Yes.
how do you help, parents ad- address that?
So what I do is I like to invite parents to, as I say, step out onto the balcony and
Mm,
take a long-term view and ask yourself the question of how can my child benefit from this? I often use the example of every single year our kids go to a different teacher,
right.
and that teacher has a different style of teaching.
Hmm.
And are all of your kids' needs going to be met by that style of teaching? No. Are some of those styles of teaching going to be difficult for your child? Yes. But what are the benefits of that?
Mm,
Right. And I think the benefit is that you're teaching your kids to be well-rounded.
mhm,
You're teaching them resilience, and you're teaching them how to cope in different environments.
mhm. That's a great analogy because I've never really thought of it in that sense, but we all have to deal with different peoples in our lives who have different personalities and different approaches to things. And so it's the same thing, even if they're your parents.
Absolutely. Yes.
What are some of the biggest challenges parents face when they're starting their co-parenting journey as a separated or non-coupled, after a divorce or a separation?
What I see a lot is that people are stuck in the grief, in the anger, in the resentment. And it's really hard to break free of that.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I really love about helping people to get grounded in their values, because then we say you can use those values as your armor, because people often think, oh, I'll never be able to process through all of those feelings. And is it ideal if you can process through the sadness and the grief? 100%.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily a luxury as you're learning how to co-parent,
Right.
right? There's not the time, there's not the money, there's all the things. So it's coming back to what's important to you and what you want your outcome to be, and being able to say, okay, I can protect myself from this, and that will enable me to co-parent. It's like really essentially it's setting healthy boundaries.
Right. And do you recommend parents use any sort of tools as far as like setting boundaries, whether that's co-parenting apps to communicate with one another or any other, tools that they could use?
What I do often recommend tools, but what I really try to work with parents to do is to create their own system that
Mhm.
works for them, right? So people will say, only communicate in, I don't know, our family wizard.
Yep.
But it's really figuring out what works for you. I talk about, every workplace operates on an operating system, right? Employee operating system. So really what we're trying to do is to develop our co-parenting
Right.
operating system. And so
Yeah.
it's whatever works for you. Like people say, well, they say that we should have dinner together once a week as a family. And yeah, that's an ideal. But if you hate each other and
Not
there's going to be tension and conflict, that doesn't help anybody.
right.
So
Not
it's like
everybody
giving,
gets
absolutely not. And it's giving permission to be human and to
right.
say, nope, that doesn't work for us, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, you have to definitely find what is going to be the best fit for your particular family. Uh,
Mhm.
and that so varies, from situation to situation.
Yeah, one of the tools that I work with parents to create is something that we call kids news.
Mhm.
So this is your agreement of
Mhm.
how you're going to communicate, like what method of communication, how often,
Mhm.
what's the understanding for a response time.
Yep.
So everything is very clear. So like once a week before we transition, here's kids news. And we even outline like, okay, social, emotional, academic,
Mhm.
extracurriculars, like it's very structured.
Right. I very much appreciate those types of communication tools so that everybody's on the same page. Everyone knows exactly what to be looking for. And some people need that structure a lot more so than, the random or text messages or emails. Some people just need to have, I find that when I'm working with some couples, each person has differing opinions as to how much communication. Right?
Yes.
There's some people that want communication constantly, like an update on all of the things.
Mhm.
And then there are others that want the high level, like give me the brief update.
Mhm.
And so I think helping parents figure out what's going to work for both of them is critical.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Helping them to figure out what's going to work for both. And maybe each one bending a little bit
Mhm.
towards what the other person needs, because that's what's good for their kids.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, how does ongoing conflict between parents impact children both emotionally and psychologically? This is something that, we hear about often. And often, it's some people will choose to stay in a marriage because they, want to do it for the kids.
Mhm.
But what they're not necessarily recognizing is what the conflict, how that is impacting their children.
Yes. I say probably every day. It's not your family structure that's
Mhm.
going to really determine how well your kids are going to do. It's your family dynamic,
Right.
right? So if you're stuck in a dynamic where there's conflict all the time, whether you're married or you're not married,
Mhm.
it's, your kids' self-esteem is going to suffer, their level of anxiety, their level of depression, their ability to establish and maintain relationships on their own, and not just romantic relationships, friendships,
Mhm.
because every day with every interaction, we are modeling for them how to do this,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so again, it's sort of brings you back to that question of how do you want your child to describe this in 10 years?
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's
So the conflict, it's in essence, it's the conflict that's really going to hurt your kids.
right.
Yeah. And it'll affect school, it'll affect every aspect of their lives, emotional, social, spiritual, every single aspect of their lives.
Yeah. And I think that's what people miss often is it, like you said, it's not the structure of your family unit, but the dynamic between everyone and how that is truly impacting the kids.
Hmm. Yeah. And how the kids can become vehicles for that
Hmm.
dynamic.
Right. So tell me more about that.
So kids will learn to navigate the dynamic, and they're going to learn to bend and stretch in order to keep the peace, in order to appease both sets of parents,
Yeah.
and you don't want kids to have to do that because they're kids. They shouldn't have it, like they shouldn't have to take the emotional temperature of either parent when they walk in the door and figure out, okay, how do I navigate this?
Right. Yeah. Is that what you mean when you're talking about putting the child's peace first?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Okay. So what are some of the practical ways for parents to do that?
So it's funny, there's some things that you wouldn't even think about, right? Like, people talk about you don't want to badmouth your ex in front of your kids,
Right.
100%.
Hmm.
But you also want to be really careful about what you say to who.
Right.
So, say, for example, you're at a soccer game and you're sitting next to a friend and talking about your co-parent in a negative way. And that friend's kid overhears this conversation because they're sitting on the other side of their parent, right? Now they're going to go back to your kid and say, this is what your mom said about your dad,
Hmm.
or this is what your dad said about your mom, right?
Right.
So it's the smaller kind of nuances that we wouldn't necessarily think about. So it's really choosing
Hmm.
who and when. things like, Mom, can I use your phone to Google X, Y, and Z? Well, kids are kids, and they're going to go into your text messages and they're going to see what you just said about their other parent.
Right.
And then they're going to shift their behavior based on what you say and what they think you need.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to be really clear about the boundaries of who and when you have those conversations with. It's not realistic to say only have them with professionals, because we all have needs, but it's the timing and the placement.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it is an obvious one, but not necessarily using your children as a sounding board about grievances.
Mm-hmm. And people do it in ways that they don't even realize, like it's a very simple, like, so I had a situation a couple of weeks ago where a little girl had a school project, and the mom forgot to get the school supplies for the school project. And the dad was like, your mom is so forgetful, like not even thinking,
right,
what's the seed you're planting here about the mom? Wish your mom could be more responsible and just get these things done. Okay, how about, mom's human, let's go get some poster board.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And I would also stretch it, because I know that generally when we're talking about co-parenting, we're talking about younger kids. But this, in my opinion, even goes to those older kids and adults, because they're still your kids and they're still feeling like they are being pulled between parents, even as they're older.
It's especially risky when your kids are older, because it's easier, because you think developmentally they can handle this. They have the knowledge, they have the skills, but at the end of the day, you're still their parents.
Right.
And they still deserve to be able to have their own relationships undiluted by each parent.
Yeah.
And older kids become equally as unmoored by a divorce as younger kids do. We tend to think that they don't, but they really do. Imagine you have a kid who's off at college and now their parents are getting divorced, and like now they're coming home and having to navigate holidays between two homes at a time when they're trying to differentiate anyway. And now they're having to figure out, how do I manage this? And both my parents really want to see me, but really, quite frankly, I just kind of want to hang out with my friends. So, right. So it's equally as, disconcerting for older kids as it is for younger kids.
Absolutely. What role does being a co-parent coach play in supporting these families? What do you do with families to help support their co-parenting relationship?
A lot of things. It's a lot of mindset work. It's a lot of teaching skills, and it's I think the most important piece is really being able to help people anchor into keeping the focus on what do my kids need? Am I making this decision based on what I think my kids need, or is this some kind of a revenge plot? Really being able to ask yourself those hard questions, and then celebrating when you do it well.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's something that for lots of places in our lives, we don't necessarily do. Celebrate when we do something well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Part of what I love about the program that I have is at the end, we bring the kids into the program. And as part of the program, we have the parents create what we call the co-parenting commitment. And they share that commitment with their kids. And it's a really powerful thing to see the kids and the relief that comes over their faces when they hear their parents make this commitment in writing and out loud to each other and to them, that we are going to do our best.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That actually leads me to another question, which was going to be, obviously, at least it feels obvious to me, so correct me if I'm wrong, co-parent coaching works better when you are working with both parents. But are there scenarios where you also work with an individual parent, maybe because the other person is just reluctant or not unwilling to participate?
all the time. And I do see improved outcomes either way. As you said, it's definitely ideal if I have both parents.
Mhm.
But even a simple shift in terms of like a boundary that you can set will change a dynamic.
Right.
So yeah, I absolutely can work with just one parent.
Okay. That's helpful to know because, there, again, in my work in working with couples, in mediation, there is often in a scenario where one parent may be willing and the other parent may not necessarily be as understanding or as willing to participate. But that one person wants to improve things as much as they can. Obviously, it helps if both people are on board with making those shifts. But I do agree that, even when it's just one person, shifting the mindset, if nothing else, or setting that boundary can improve the reaction even from the other person.
Absolutely. And it's funny because what I see a lot is I'll have one parent that I'm working with, and then the other parent will sort of start to see some of the changes, and then they'll want to come along and do the work as well. So
Yeah.
I love when that happens
Right.
because it's sort of like proof that it's making a difference. So I do see that a lot, but absolutely I have, many, many times worked with just one parent.
Yeah. When you're working with parents, how do you help them reframe conflict so that they can work towards solutions?
Um, so there's a couple of things that I do. One of them is to ask them to really think about, what is this really about?
Uh-huh.
Is this really about your kid? And digging into that. I had a couple that I worked with a few years back where the daughter was going into kindergarten, and the mom was very insistent that she do half day kindergarten. The dad was insistent that she do full day. And when we pulled it all apart, it really was dad was going to be feeling really left out because mom would have more time.
Right.
So, okay, so this is not really about kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when we figured that out, we were able to come up with a solution. So it's really trying to figure out what is the heart of this conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And once we get to the heart of it, okay, so what's the solution?
Interesting. Yeah. And sometimes it takes a little while to get to what really is at the heart of that.
Sometimes it takes, yes, a couple of sessions. And sometimes it means I work with one parent
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of weeks, and then I work with the other parent, and then we come back together.
Yeah.
And figure it out.
What advice do you give a parent who is feeling hopeless about having a peaceful co-parenting relationship? Maybe it's been high conflict work for a while and they're doing the work, but they're not seeing a shift in the other person.
Then it's really anchoring in, and again, it sort of comes back to anchoring in your why. Why am I making these shifts? I'm making these shifts because I want the best for my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And holding on to the understanding that we can't, for better or not, or better or worse, change other people. And it's really important to know, even as you go into co-parent coaching, I can't change that other person, but I'm still going to work with what's important to me. And I'm going to stay in that. And I'm going to accept, it's working on acceptance.
Right.
This is how my co-parent operates in the world, and I'm not going to change that. And that's a really hard piece to accept. But once you kind of say it out loud enough times, and, I say to people, just like sort of fake it till you make it. Like, I'm accepting you as you are. I'm accepting you as you are. I know this is how you, and the piece that they gain from that is amazing.
Yeah. Recognizing that they're not going to be able to change the other person. And honestly, if they had been able to, then they may not have separated to begin with.
And that's what I say all the time, and I also offer, you got divorced because you wanted the conflict to stop.
Right.
And if it doesn't stop, what's the point of putting everybody through this?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. 100%. Well, how can parents reset if maybe they've already made some mistakes in their co-parenting journey? We kind of talked about that a little bit, but maybe they're trying to make another shift. What types of things can they do?
Do you mean with their kids or with their co-parent? Or
I-
both?
Either.
Okay. I would say honestly, with your kids, it's kind of about owning it,
Mm,
like owning your mistake
yeah.
and connecting with them on an emotional level. I did this and I feel like I pulled you into the middle of it in that way. And I'm really sorry.
Mm,
And here's what I'm going to do differently next time.
okay. Yeah.
Um, and in many ways, the same with your co-parent, like, there's a lot of vulnerability in the apology. So it doesn't have to be that deep, but it's just like, hey, can we start looking towards the future and doing things differently? This isn't working for us or for our kids. So let's just try to do this a little bit differently.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And also, I say to people all the time, you don't have to engage in every argument that you're invited to.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of those boundary setting, right? Like, and only responding to those things that need a response.
There's no need to go back to 3 years ago when X, Y, and Z happened. That doesn't benefit your kids in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rita, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your compassion with us today. I greatly appreciate it. How can our listeners learn more about you and the services that you provide?
They can go to my website. It's thecoparentspath.com. Or people are always welcome to reach out and call me, schedule a complimentary consult. I'm happy to do that. My phone number is 781-492-6082, and I'm always happy to hear from people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll be sure to put your website in the show notes. And for our listeners, if you or someone you know needs legal support through divorce, custody, or co-parenting, we at Jacobson Family Law are here to help. Make sure you schedule a consultation on our website, which is jacobsonfamilylaw.com. And if you found this episode of Divorce Diaries Lessons from the Trenches helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with a friend, and leave a review. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'm your host, Cary Jacobson. Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Divorce Diaries. Remember, every journey is unique, but you don't have to navigate it alone. Visit jacobsonfamilylaw.com or call 443-726-4912 for support and guidance.